Hello, this is Laura Huerta Migus of the Association of Children's Museums. For the next few minutes, we'll be reviewing the Bennett model of cultural competence as it applies to individuals and organizations for the CCLI experience. A little bit about the model before we begin. The Bennett model is just one of a number of developmental models that exist that map out the process of building cultural competence. This model was developed by Dr. Milton Bennett, who's the founder of the Intercultural Development Research Institute. You can find out more about Dr. Bennett and his work at idrinstitute.org. This model describes the way that people, and as we've expanded it for the CCLI model, organizations react to and navigate cultural differences. We hope this tool will be useful for you in diagnosing your own stage of cultural competence across dimensions of diversity, as well as thinking about your organization's stage of cultural competence for designing an appropriate change strategy, especially for the CCLI experience. Here's an overview of the model. The model outlines 6 stages of cultural competence that are divided into 2 categories. The first category are the ethnocentric stages, and these stages reflect a mindset where one's own cultural worldview is central to an individual or organization's reality. The second category of stages are called the ethno-relativistic stages. And in these stages, there is a recognition of multiple cultural worldviews for individuals and organizations. The extreme end of the ethnocentric stages starts with denial. The next is defense, and then minimization. From minimization, we move to the ethno-relativistic stages, the first being acceptance, followed by adaptation, and finally integration. In the next slides, we will explore the individual stages in more depth, both from what individual behaviors look like in these stages, and also what organizational behaviors might look like in these stages, again, as we've expanded based on our experience in the CCLI project. In the first ethnocentric stage, denial, which is the most extreme phase, the main idea is that my or our culture is the only real culture. Now, what this looks like on an individual level is an individual not really knowing that there are significantly other ways of being in the world. Bennett often attributes this to social or geographic isolation. So this really represents individuals who have not had much opportunity to experience significant cultural difference. And again, this social and geographic isolation can happen in rural, urban locations, within neighborhoods, etc., etc. This is about having an experience of homogeneity. At the organizational level, what we might see for an organization that fits into this stage is a lack of diversity on staff and a lack of formal or informal conversations about diversity, except what's mandated by law. And it's really treated as a checklist of something that has to be done. However, as individuals and organizations have more and more experience with difference, either from leaving their isolation for individuals or for organizations, a change in their customer base or local community, they often move into the next stage, which is defense. And in the defensive stage, the idea here is that my or our culture is the best or worst, and we'll get to that in a moment, culture. Individuals in the defensive stage are often caught in a pattern of us versus them thinking, and may express comfortably negative stereotyping about other groups. This is the behavior that we are often most comfortable in recognizing as problematic around issues of cultural competence. Bennett also identifies a third type of defensive behavior, which he calls reversal, in which an individual devalues their own culture and romanticizes and idolizes and perhaps takes on the trappings of another culture. The reason that this still falls into the defense phase is because there is a judgment, a negative judgment about a culture, the individual's own culture. At an organizational level, defensive behaviors might look like a consideration of diversity as a problem to be solved in the organizational narrative, seeing diverse or other types of populations as needing charity. Again, there's some condescension there. Or seeing other cultures and groups as being special. Again, this is related a bit to that reversal behavior we see at the individual level. Moving forward, as individuals and organizations continue to experience real difference, these negative judgments become less polarized, and individuals and organizations begin to be able to see similarities between worldviews. And that moves us into the final ethnocentric stage, which he identifies as minimization. And the key idea here is the idea that we're all just human. In this stage, individuals will focus strongly on human similarity in terms of physical structures, psychological needs, and this idea that there are universal values. There might be a belief that awareness of difference is enough, but again, what we should focus on is our similarities. Another indicator of individual behavior at this level is again an awareness of difference, but also a lack of awareness or inability to acknowledge the dynamics of privilege that happen as a result of cultural differences at a societal level. At the organizational level, we might see minimization behaviors that look like convincing others of the value of the organization's mission. Again, focusing on having others buy into the organization's existing culture and philosophy as being good, and trying to find those what we call entry points into understanding our way of being. And in partnerships with the community and with different cultural communities, we see that those relationships are often inconsistent and opportunistic at this stage. In other words, good ideas, but that are happening because they fulfill the needs of the home organization and are not consistently sustained if, for example, the funding goes away or there's a change in leadership. Again, with increasing experience across difference, individuals and organizations will start to understand the importance of acknowledging difference and not just considering similarities. And that moves us into the next stage, the first ethno-relativistic stage, called acceptance. And the key idea in this phase is that my way or our way is only one way of being amongst many other ways of being. So at the individual level, we might see an eagerness to ask questions, but that questioning is really driven from a desire to be informed, not to validate existing prejudices. At the organizational level, there starts to be narrative around consideration of the larger landscape outside the organization's core practices and walls, especially consideration of environmental factors that might be challenges to the organization's work. Groups that might have what could be considered to be opposing beliefs, and trying to understand how that affects the organization's practice. We start to see some special programming for diverse groups, development of cultural brokers and advisory groups, some reflection and assessment of the organization's current offerings to really understand where they fit in the larger context that we talked about earlier, and introduction of staff training and education around diversity issues. Again, as this behavior and experience grows, we move to the next phase called adaptation. And in adaptation, our key idea is learning how to walk the walk. By engaging in the reflection and learning activities in the acceptance phase, individuals gain greater interest in expanding their own worldview, start to learn how to behave in appropriate ways across cultural contexts, and individuals start to become very skilled in using empathy to walk their talk. This stage for individuals is more internally focused around internal knowledge, awareness, and skill building. At the organizational level, we start to see significant change to internal structures and policies. We might see recruitment and retention strategies for diversity being implemented. We might see co-development of offering with those community advisors and cultural brokers. The development of visible and actionable diversity and inclusion priorities for the entire organization. And also we move from the idea of special programming to ongoing significant programming that reflect diverse worldviews. Again, moving away from other perspectives being special to the acknowledgement that other perspectives are the norm. And as empathy grows and that skill grows, we move to the final stage called integration. And our key idea here is the comfort in walking through different worldviews. Individuals have skills and confidence in shifting frames of reference, and also their sense of self becomes more multicultural. That I embody a number of different cultural worldviews now and can understand other worldviews. At the organizational level, we might see the policies and procedures that are developed in the adaptation phase become habits and the way of operating in the organization. We often hear folks from organizations that are in the integration stage say, well, this is just how we do things. And now that we've reviewed all 6 stages, I'd like to revisit the entire model to point out an important piece of the model. We've walked through it in a linear fashion, but the special piece about this model is that if you look to the left side of the diagram, you will see an arrow that connects from integration back up to denial, making it cyclical. The idea here is that once an individual or an organization has built the skill and habits around learning and self-reflection, we start to understand that we need to do constant work to understand different types of worldviews. Often the Bennett model is used to build skill around a particular dimension of diversity. So that might mean a specific ethnic group, around sexual orientation, understanding around disability, worldviews that are based on geography, socioeconomic status, etc. So once an individual or an organization fully walks the model to integration and enters into that reflection model, eyes are opened into the gaps of knowledge, awareness, and skill that exist across other dimensions of diversity. So by connecting the integration phase back up to the denial phase, really makes explicit the fact that cultural competence is an ongoing, lifelong learning pursuit. By using the model, we can help ourselves understand where our own opportunities for learning are, help us understand where others are in their understanding and experience across working for difference, and also understand where we are as an organization, and help us to design appropriate change strategies for moving us positively through the Bennett model to cultural competence.